Hi students, welcome to the Unit 6 review, Unit 6 live event. This is Dr. Wilcox, and
And
with
this
me
is
is...
Dr. McClellan. Hi.
Hey!
So, should we jump right in?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so the home stretch, people, this is Unit 6 out of 6 units. That means when you get to Unit 7, you're on vacation,
Vacation.
because there is no
What's
Unit 7.
vacation? Isn't that when you get sick and go visit people in the hospital? Oh
Exactly.
wait, that's 2014 vacations. 2015 vacations will involve sun.
That's right, yes. Maybe some of you might be planning to go see some sun. Um, here in the upper New York, New Jersey region, we're headed into a nor'easter, which will be nasty rain, just cold enough to be miserable and just warm enough for it to be rain and not snow.
Well, we're supposed to get a big rainstorm here in Berkeley on Wednesday, which is good because hopefully it will keep the protesters in the house. Because right now, if I open my window, there's some nice helicopter sounds, which have been going constantly nonstop for days. Because I live a block from the Berkeley police station, which
Oh
is
wow.
really exciting. Yeah. So
Yeah, I've had a few protests up in this neighborhood too.
yeah. Well, it's
New York.
usually about my cleaning skills that cause the protests in Berkeley. Um, my lack of cleaning, but today it's about recent judicial action, which is not really the subject tonight.
Yes,
So,
all things can be cured. All ills can be cured by music theory. No, that is not true. I'm
well,
joking.
music theory does show you how to stack things together harmoniously. So
It's
let's stack some chords, Robin.
actually it tells you one thing. It tells you is how to resolve dissonances in
Oh,
conflict. It tells you how to resolve tension into resolution. So
and for more advanced people, you can
yes,
prolong tension.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so this unit is all about uh, putting everything that you've learned together into one big conglomeration, which is four-part harmony, which is means that you have everything working together now. You have scales informing what the notes are. You have rhythms informing the structure. You have which feeds into the idea of cadences, which is we're going to get to in this unit. And then we have intervals forming chords, and then now finally we have not only chords, but chords forming themselves into groupings, larger groupings of structures of chord progressions. And
Mm.
meanwhile, we have all those individual notes that we have to be worrying about. So I'm going to start a screen share.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and, we already have one question, and it's about
Okay.
that tonic dominant homework, which is the first homework, which often causes some confusion. So maybe that would be a good place to start. And I will mute my mic so your screen share works.
And is my screen share now showing?
It is.
All right. Yeah, so I think in general we should get practical and focus on the homeworks and not worry as much about the concepts. Just how do you actually do the homework? That's probably what we just have a feeling that's what you actually want to know. You're not you love the theoretical background stuff, but at the end of the day, and it is the end of the day, you want to know how to do the homework. So I didn't see the actual question. Let me just take a quick look. Okay, I'm having trouble with this homework. Overall, I'm confused. Okay, confused by the whole thing. That's excellent because that allows us to walk right through it. Um, that's understandable because there's a lot of components to this homework. So I'm just going to go step by step. Each score contains 3 harmonic progressions, and they're divided by double bar lines. So this is the first one. Each progression is 2 chords, very, very short progression. In each progression, a dominant function chord moves to a tonic chord. Now, dominant function is a really, really important concept for this unit. So if you're not really sure what that means, that could be problematic. So dominant function, the whole concept of function in music I mean, music isn't really that functional, is it? I mean, it's just a bunch of nice sounds that helps you do your homework or whatever. It's not really, doesn't have a function, but, well, that's debatable. But what does function mean? It means that a certain chord has a place in the key. It has a role to play, and what that usually means is that it leads to some other chord in a certain way that almost always happens a certain way. So a dominant function chord, it has a function, and that function is to prepare your ear and prepare your mind for the tonic. And so that's why it's not a single chord, because several chords fulfill that function. And they're listed right here: 5 chord, 5/7 chord, or 7 diminished chord. All of those serve that one function, so they're grouped together into dominant function. So make sure you understand that. Identify the inversion of the dominant function chord. This is something that you need to also be good at from Unit 5, is figuring out the inversions. And we've gotten a few questions about that, so I'll just mention that there's a trick to figuring out, first of all, what chord you have, and second of all, what the inversion is, especially when they're all stretched out like this. Think of it as a mini puzzle, little mini brain teaser. How do you take the 4 notes and get them all as closely packed together into stacked thirds as you can? And it's kind of a process of elimination, and I recommend using a pencil and paper to actually do this. So here we have a G, we have a B, we have an F, and another B. How do you get those packed together? First of all, we have 2 B's, so let's eliminate one of them. Then we have a G, a B, and an F.
Yeah, you did start with a difficult one.
Yeah, why don't we start with a simpler one?
Yeah, actually, if you want to know about that particular chord, I actually described that in a post on Piazza yesterday, and that chord's missing its 5th. So just because that one's a slightly
you're right.
More complicated example, we're going to move on to the next one.
Yeah, good idea.
Just to teach you the general process. If you read the lesson, you'll see we discussed individual notes being missed, but just kind of teach you the process of how to identify this chord. So let's start with another one.
Maybe the 3rd one here, which has all its notes, and it also has the advantage of the G is low. So what I'm gonna do with this one is I'm gonna move all the notes down so they're packed close together. Just, you have to kind of use your imagination with me. So we have the G down here. I'm gonna move this B down an octave to the 2nd line. That's about as close as it can get. Then I'm gonna move the D all the way down a couple octaves to the 3rd line. And then I'm going to move this F all the way down an octave to the 4th line. And that's going to create a nice stacked up 7th chord with the root on G. And because the bottom note is also G, the bass note is also G, it's in root position. So if I had determined through that process that the B was on the bottom, or then think about what inversion that would be. The B is what component of the chord? Well, it's the 3rd of the chord, and when the 3rd of the chord is in the bass, it's a 1st inversion chord. Then, so this is all about breaking it down into steps. So first, get the chord into root position, step 1.
You could probably use the note palette, maybe.
Yeah, why don't
to drag notes around.
Good idea. Yeah, it's worth slow. With this stuff, it's worth kind of slowing down and going really methodically. Don't try to do. It's exactly like math problems. Like, the more you try to do in your head, the more you're opening yourself up to errors. And of course, if you become a super duper expert, then you'll start to do it in your head. But there's no shame in not doing it in your head, especially when the goal is accuracy. So where is a palette? Natural. What's the best palette to use? Maybe the Creative Project 3 palette. Yeah, that's a good one. My screen's a little small, but can you see it? Is it showing up? I'm going to assume yes. Oh, Stephen, I can't hear you. You were talking, but
Oh,
you,
okay.
there
What
you
I was
are.
saying is it might seem like there's all these different chords, all these different things that you have to be able to decipher and learn, and how can this even work, that people are always counting and doing stuff. You know, if you do this for like a semester or so, which is usually what happens in the first semester of a theory class that you take as a music major, your eye just becomes accustomed to seeing this, and you don't have to count, you don't have to do anything. You'll just be able to say, oh, that's this chord and it's in that inversion, this chord, that inversion. It just becomes kind of intuitive because, frankly, there is a limited number of ways that you can stack chords in thirds. And I actually outlined that in one of the posts on Piazza. I mean, if you take just some musical letters, there's A, C, E, G, B, D, F, A, and that series is stacked in thirds. And you really can't have a chord outside of that series of letters. I guess what I'm getting to is it might seem difficult now, and you might wonder why you're doing it. But if you were to continue to do this for a few more weeks, a few more months, you would be able to eyeball all of this stuff. It's like learning a language, learning the basic articles of speech of a language, and just being able to understand a significant amount just visually by a little bit of practice. So even though it seems like a lot to learn at first, this is the doorway to that kind of visual understanding that you'll gain with more time.
Yes, absolutely. So I've got a nice chord stacked up right here. I'm only in treble clef because that's all I have here, but I'm trying to illustrate the same point with a 4-note chord. Can you all see this? I hope. So
You're good.
okay, so how do you get this into? So let me go through the steps. This is what you're faced with. This is your chord. You're looking for the what type of chord it is, and you're also looking for the inversion of the chord. So take that in 2 steps. First, what is the chord? Well, right now we don't really know. There's an E, a G, a C, and a G, but they're not in the right order. Or it's not really an E chord, it's not really a C chord, or maybe it is a C chord, but the way you need to check this is to pack them up nice and tight. So the E and the G are already as tightly packed as we can get. If we move this top G down, well, actually, I'm going to leave them there and add other notes. So I'm going to move this top G down. All that does is it doubles this G. So we can get rid of that top G altogether and leave this low G in place. If we take our C and move it down here with a lovely ledger line, then, whoops, as I should know, you're supposed to place the ledger line first. I'm out of practice on these palettes. I have to place the ledger line first. And then we have a C right on top of that. And then we have our E. And ultimately what we want is that nice bunch of stacked thirds. I'm a little rusty on placing notes on the palette, but bear with me. Keeps coming out as a D. Okay, perfect. And this is how we identify, that the chord is in fact a arg. I apologize. I'm also kind of, okay. There we have a C chord. Now we can tell that, so this would actually be easier on paper. But now what we can see is that it's a C chord and that the E is on the bottom, so it is a first inversion chord. Going back to the homework, we would need to do that with this. Then you need to be solid from you. This is something a point we made last time, but this is very much cumulative. So if you're solid on Unit 5, this stuff is going to be easier. If you're a little rusty on Unit 5, this stuff will be harder. So from the inversion, then you need to know the figured base figure. And this is kind of a matter of memorization. So if you just know in your heart by memorization that a first inversion 7th chord is represented by the letters 6, 5, then you'll be fine with that step. And then finally, step 3, determine if the dominant function resolves incorrectly to the tonic chord. This is tricky. You need to be now, so there's 2 elements to this. Up until now, we've been looking only vertically, only what happens with the notes as they're stacked up on top of each other in a vertical direction. The 3rd step asks you to start looking horizontally, and that is a whole new thing that we haven't dealt with yet, except, I guess, when we did so in scales. But that's kind of a new element in this unit. So here you need to be thinking about each note in 2 different roles at the same time. It has a role in the chord as the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, the root, but it also has a role in the key. And so it's like an actor playing. There's those spoof or those farce plays where an actor is playing one character, but then that character dresses up as another person. So you, as the audience member, you know that the character is an actor, and then the actor is also an actor, and they're kind of 2 things at once. And that's where the joy of watching comes, because it's sort of funny. Well, the joy in music is that the note is functioning in 2 different ways at the same time. So for example, going back to this chord, we have this B is the 3rd of a G chord, but then you have to think about, well, what note in the scale is it? And luckily it tells you it's C major. So you know that it's the 7th scale degree and the 3rd of the 5 chord. And then again, you need to know the rules. So that's where you need to know the scale degree. Scale degree 7 always does a certain thing. And all you have to do is be clear on that it's that scale degree, and then look at what it does. So the B goes from B to C. It resolves upward, B to C, and this is what I mean about looking horizontally. You're moving left to right. I hope this is, I feel like I'm being long-winded, but I hope this is helpful. So why don't we just maybe give the answer to one of these. So we're in chord number 3 over here, and so I'm going to go down to chord number 3. Correct resolution. What is the answer here? Incorrect. 7th scale degree resolution is wrong. Then we have the 4th scale degree question. The 4th scale degree has to go down from scale degree 4 to scale degree 3. In this case, the 7 goes up correctly. The 4 also goes up, but it should not go up. It should go down. So the answer would be incorrect. 4th scale degree resolution is wrong. So I hope that is useful. Let me just jump to the next one. I'm watching the clock to be
fair, that is a particularly difficult homework assignment. So
yes,
I mean, there are reasons. There are certain expectations of where this course would go, and one of the things that people don't always understand is that this is a prerequisite for further music courses, and there's a responsibility that we have to cover things that students will be expected to have some familiarity with moving forward. So it is in the last unit. It is kind of an ultimate thing we reach, that's starting to talk about things that are like chord resolution and what's called voice leading. And that might seem like, well, why are we doing this? It seems out of the blue. But well, it's something that we've been building towards, but it's also something to prepare students to go forward with music courses. And even if you don't go forward with a music course, it's just a little introduction, and it's not a major component of the grade or anything else in this unit. So do your best at it, and if you don't necessarily get every aspect of how to resolve these chords or understand it all perfectly, it's not the end of the world. It's just 1% of the entire course. But the reason it's there is to kind of open up the world of all future theory classes.
Yep. And I would also add that, and I sort of implied in what I was saying before, but think of each of these questions as a whole bunch of questions that you're answering in order to answer one larger question. So don't think of this as, I think it might just help to think of this as a series of questions that you kind of have to lay out for yourself in order to arrive at the end answer. Right? Again, kind of like a complex math problem. Why don't I jump to the next homework and just sort of go through each homework at least a little bit to make sure that we're covering that, because again, I think that's what you guys want to know is how do I do this? So based on the given key, identify each chord by the scale degree of its root. Yeah, so this is about giving the chords Roman numerals. And then from there, so this is kind of what I was saying before, it's a similar task. From there, you determine the chord inversion, because you need to know the name of the chord and what it would be in root position, and then look at which of the 3 or 4 notes in the chord is in the bass in order to determine the inversion. So that's why the step 1 comes first. Then figure out which of these 3 harmonic functions is it going to be. So let's just do an example. Hopefully I won't pick anything too tricky. We're in F major, and I'm going to go with the chord over here on J. All right, so it's a nice little chord, and let's put it into stacked thirds arrangement by just getting everything nice and tight and close. So we have I'm going to start, I tend to start with the lower notes and kind of bring the other notes down to them. So we have the D and the F. Those are as close as they can get. And when I say that, I just realize they could be a second apart, which would be even closer. But in terms of chords, they should never be that close unless it's in an inversion. So when I say...
Yeah, honestly, just on this little point,
yeah.
I actually noticed when you said that the last time, those are as close as those letters are to each other. You can't get the letter F any closer to the letter D than D, E, F, right? And if you want F to be closer to D, then you have to make F, E, right? I mean, because that's the alphabet, D, E, F. So D can't be any closer than D, F, right? Makes sense? Now,
yes,
if you want F, D, you have to go all the way around the alphabet till you get back to D again. So D and F, when we stack in thirds, we do it because of the letters, D, F.
You can also think of thirds. I love using the word skip instead of third, because it's literally what you're doing. You're skipping one note to make a third. It's a skip. So you're skipping D, you're starting with D, skip E, and you land on F, and that's as close as you can get if it's a chord. So let's see, let's move the next note down, D. Well, it's another D, so we're going to just rule that out because it's redundant. It doesn't help us build the chord. Move the B flat. Remember, it's a B flat because of the key signature, down an octave. That's going to be a fourth away from F. That's more than a skip. F, G, A, B flat. We skip over 2 notes, so that's too big. So what happens if we move the B down another octave? So we first moved it here. I'm going to just do it quickly on here instead of using the palette because of in the interest of time. So just follow me in my imagination. If I move the B flat all the way down to this second line of the bass clef, there we have it. B, C, skip C, D. And there we have B, D, F. stacked thirds chord, B flat, D, F. And that is our root position close formation chord. And from there, we can do step 1. What scale degree in F major is that? Well, start on F. F is 1, G is 2, A is 3, B flat is 4. So it's a chord with the root on the 4th scale degree. Step 2, what inversion is it? Well, we know that the D is in the bass going back to its true position in the chord, and that is the 3rd of the chord, so it's first inversion, which is a 6 in figured bass. If it's a 7th chord, well, it's not. If it were, those would be different figured bass numbers. Step 3, determine each chord's harmonic function using one of these 3 names. This is, again, now something you just have to go back to the lesson and memorize. All chords fall into these 3 categories. Tonic, there's only 1 chord in the category. It's the tonic chord. They're kind of increasingly large. The 2nd category, dominant, has 3 chords, 5, 5, 7, and the 7 diminished chord. Dominant prep is kind of a catch-all term for all other chords because ultimately all other chords are leading to dominant, which then leads back to tonic. So because this is neither a dominant chord nor a tonic chord, it is a dominant prep chord. So that is your answer. Moving, I'm going to jump right ahead because we're, unless you have anything to add to that, Doc Wilcox, or other questions that might have.
Well, that was the answer that I came up with as well. So.
Oh, good. So that's a good sign.
Yeah. So I feel affirmed by your analysis that is a dominant prep chord.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
Hopefully we're both correct and not both incorrect.
That would be the hope, yes. Because someone's wasted a lot of money on student loans if we're not both correct.
That's right. Luckily we are. We are infallible. We are music demigods.
I think clearly we have demonstrated that we are not infallible. I think we have made that abundantly clear.
Well,
but
we're mostly infallible.
We're very nice.
We're very nice. That's a good way of putting it.
Okay, I'll let you go.
Non-chord tones. Okay, non-chord tones is kind of self-explanatory in terms of what it's about. There are tones or notes that just don't fit into a chord, and they kind of serve as little in-between notes to connect chords together, and they come in these different types. And the names are, finally we have some music theory term that actually really describes the note pretty well. So just looking down here, we have these red notes. These are passing tones because they're literally, you pass by them on your way from, so this is G, pass by A to get to B. One quick note about these homeworks that could throw you off a little bit. We used, because of the online format, we had to design them very carefully, and we used letters to correspond to the question numbers. So A, B, C doesn't mean notes, even though it just so happens by pure coincidence that this is also an A, but this is actually the note C, but it's for question number B. So just keep that in mind, because there is no J and K and L, right? So, and then we repeat the example so that you don't have to keep scrolling up and down. So why don't we look at I don't know, let's look at J. So all you have to do is look at the note before it and the note after it, and is it passing through, or is it conversely? Let's find an alternate type. To be honest, most of them are passing notes, passing tones. There aren't many of the other variety, which is the neighbor tone. Accented and unaccented. This is where Unit 2 creeps right in there. You forgot all about Unit 2, didn't you? That was the unit on rhythm. And again, that's why we say this unit is kind of a culmination, because it starts to bring everything together. And accented versus unaccented means if it's on a strong part of the beat or a strong part of the measure, it's accented. If it's on a weak part of the beat, it's unaccented. And again, you have to be solid on unit 2. In short, the kind of cheat sheet is that there's usually going to be these little pairs of eighth notes, and if it's the second one in the pair, that's unaccented. If it's the first one in the pair, it's accented. So most of these are unaccented passing tones. This one is an accented, I believe, passing tone. Although that's a little weird because it's coming from the same note before, so I'd have to double check that one. I'm fallible on that point, but we're almost there, so I'm just going to jump right ahead. One thing that is merciful is that this unit is short, because we've tortured you enough. We thought, let them enjoy the holiday season, at least a little bit. Cadences. Again, this is kind of a matter of rhythm. It's like rhythm on a larger scale. How do you stretch out a measure into a larger structure called a phrase? And that's what lesson 4 is all about. A phrase is a kind of larger, complete rhythmic entity that feels whole and complete. And it ends with a cadence. And the comparison people always make is to language, which has sentences and then punctuation, and a cadence is like the punctuation at the end of a sentence. And I strongly recommend using the audio files here. I don't know if you can hear it. It's probably just playing through my headphones, but a half cadence and a full cadence or whole cadence sound different. They really do. They sound authentic and half cadence. Sometimes people call it a full cadence and a half cadence. They really have a different sound, and then a plagal cadence is altogether something else. The other thing that's a little tricky, and this is a good example, is that you have to really be thinking how notes are moving through time. And the reason we have these little red boxes is to show you that even though these notes don't stack up, so we have this A and C over here and an A down here, they don't stack up on the page, but they are occurring at the same time because this top one is a quarter note that holds through to this eighth, through the time until this eighth note comes in. Then over here, similarly, this E down here, this quarter up here is still sounding when the E happens, so you have to start looking right to left more often than you have had to up to this point in the course. So how do you do this? Well, you put together all your knowledge and you figure out what kind of chord is this. So in A minor we have an A, a C, another A. That's only 2 notes. What the heck? That's not a chord. What's going on here, Dr. Wilcox?
I'm sorry. Which one?
We have an A and a C.
Uh-huh.
And that's not even a chord. It's just 2 little notes.
2 notes can be a harmony.
Ah, but not a very good one.
Hey, take it up with the composer.
Fair enough. Anyway, if you only have 2 notes, it's kind of again, this is real music in the wild, and what that generally means is that they're the bottom 2 notes of a chord, so you have to imagine the 3rd note on top, which would, in this case, would be an E.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind with these cadences, I mean, they either end on a tonic chord usually or on a dominant function chord. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, the second chord tells you what type of cadence it is. If it ends on a dominant chord, it's, even if a note is missing,
Right.
Yeah. Which is probably what I was thinking of when I made that years ago.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we made these now a few years ago, so we're it's like looking
always
back.
Embarrassed, constantly embarrassed. Yes.
No, it's good. It's good. We're still proud, but we occasionally see little details we might do differently now.
It's like how you feel about your children, where you're mostly proud of them, but You
right?
see little things that you wish you could, child point to.
That's right. Then they become adolescents, and then it's all over.
Yeah, yeah.
Then they go to college, and that's just the end of it.
Yep.
Disown them at that point. No. All right, that's not funny. I'm sorry.
Neither of us have kids, so that's good.
Yes.
Because clearly we'd be exceptional at that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of wraps it up in terms of going through the homeworks. I'm not seeing any other questions. Or am I? No.
Anybody want to join us and ask a question live? You can wait a second. I'm going to reload here. And
yeah.
No, but we do have a few viewers today. We have a larger audience than normal. So if anybody's got a question, we'll kind of hang out maybe for another 3 minutes after we ask you for a final call for questions, and then we'll take off. And I say 3 minutes because that's about how long it takes between when I say something and when you actually hear it. That's so right. When you hear this, jump on it, because we'll be going off the air imminently if we don't start if there's not any questions.
We have a team of high-tech studio executives monitoring everything we say, and if we say something wrong, they jump in there and edit it out before you hear it.
Yeah, this is very expensive radio time.
You think this is very off the cuff and spontaneous, but the reason it's so good is because of the editing we have going on.
I don't think
sorts of stuff that was just totally off the.
I don't think they think this is high quality. I think they think this is. This is off the cuff. Yeah.
I know. This is not rehearsed. Let's put it that way.
This is comedy. This is comedy. This is.
I'm going to jump ahead to the next page.
This is the big bucks time, as they say.
If this were comedy, you would hope it was free on YouTube.
It is free on YouTube. You can actually watch this free on YouTube. Yeah.
That's true. I didn't think of that, but it's not something you would want to use your Hulu subscription for.
Probably not. No.
Anyway, so just again, these are homeworks that require many steps. Gradually assembling the answer. Don't expect to just look at it and know the answer as you did when you were, say, for example, identifying the name of a note. That was a one-step question. This is in some cases, like a 6 or 7-step question to really be methodical and go through every little stage that you need to go through to make sure it's correct. And you're really drawing on all the other units. So if you're fuzzy on something and you're like, what is a 6-4? What is a 4-3? That's in Unit 5. Don't assume that it's brand new. We just invented it last week. It's all stuff you've seen before. You're assembling it into new shapes and forms.
We got a question.
For a few things. We have a question. Excellent.
Yes. Hana wants to know how we can tell what type of dominant chord it is. So how can we tell if it's a dominant seventh, or what's the other dominant function chord, the diminished seventh that we use?
Diminished seventh.
Or the leading tone chord? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can you tell the difference?
I just want to make an aside that that's a terminology thing that's confusing. Dominant seventh chord and diminished 7 chord are not the same thing, because in one case the 7 is referring to the little superscript 7 above the chord. In the other case, it's referring to the Roman numeral itself, which is a little a lowercase v and 2 lowercase i's, Roman numeral 7.
Which is the
leading tone chord.
Right. So we're talking about the dominant chord built on the 5th scale degree and the leading tone chord built on the 7th scale degree.
Yeah, so how do you determine which type? Basically, what it comes down to is two things. What is the root of the chord, number 1, and number 2, what scale degree is the root? So once you know the root tone, so for example, in C major, if you determine that the root is G, then what scale degree is that? It's scale degree 5, and then that determines which type of dominant chord it is. So if it's scale degree 5 is the root, it's a 5 chord. If you determine that the root is the 7th scale degree,
or B in C major.
7 chord, which would be which would be B in C major. Then it's a 7 chord. Roman numeral 7, lowercase Roman numeral.
Yeah.
So it is a little tricky. You just have to
Yeah.
get used to it.
I mean, and the other option is the dominant seventh chord, and you'll know it's a dominant seventh chord because there'll be a seventh in the chord. In other words, there'll be the interval of a seventh between the root of the chord and the top of the chord, and you essentially you'll see four notes. So, like in G major or in C major, you'd have a dominant chord would be G, B, D, and a dominant seventh chord would be G, B, D, and F. And that F between the G and the F is that minor seventh, which kind of typifies that seventh chord, or that dominant seventh chord. So what you're looking for in the homework assignments are first stacking everything in thirds, looking at the bottom note to determine what the root of the chord is, whether it's a chord built on the dominant note on the fifth scale degree or on the leading tone on the seventh scale degree, and whether there are three notes in there to make a triad, or whether there's four notes in there making a seventh chord. So that's sort of how you proceed with that.
Yep, exactly. So I have up on my screen, I don't know if you can see well, but this is going back to 1 and 5 homework. Up in the right here we have the 5, Roman numeral 5, big V is 5. That's in C major, the root is G, fifth scale degree. Roman numeral V with a little 7 is a dominant seventh chord, which is in C major, which is G is the root, B, D, F. And then the 7 chord, which is Roman numeral 7, where the root is now B, not G.
So it's a B, D, F would be the chord.
Right, B, D, F. So the other reason it's tricky is because they actually sound really similar because they share a lot of pitches. It's like both chords are borrowing from the same toy box.
Yeah, there's only 4 pitches, so it can be it can be a little tricky.
Which is also why, but then you can remember that by remembering that that's why they all serve a similar harmonic function, because they have almost the same notes in them, and therefore they sound really similar, and therefore they serve a similar function, because function comes from sound.
Yep. Yep. It's about how the chords are used. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If any of you go on to do more advanced theory courses or musicianship courses, they might ask you to identify the difference between those things by ear. They might have you, they might go to the piano and play a dominant seventh chord, and then they might play a 7 chord and say, which one was it? And they share all but one note. So you're like, well, they kind of sound the same. I don't know. And then they say, well, you need to know. Go home and practice more, and so on. Anyway, so any other questions, or should we call it a night?
Well, I think we've kind of given, hopefully people feel like we've given ample opportunity to ask questions, and so why don't we call it a night, and as always, encourage people to post any questions they have below. I believe that Professor McClellan has finished all his creative project grading. I still have half of section 92 to grade, and I'll be doing that in the next day or so. But remember, the course is over on, what is it, the 10th?
Yeah, I think
is that
so.
Wednesday?
Yep. So this is the time to wrap everything up. If you're concerned about your grade, if you are missing a homework, if you have questions, please ask us. All you have to do is ask. We're very nice, and we want to help you.
Yeah, we want you to get through and be successful. So
yeah, we've been getting.
Make sure you do at least 2 creative projects, please.
Yes.
I don't even want to deal with that. I don't want to think about that.
I know. If you're not sure if you've done 2.
Yeah, if you don't know what I mean when I say that, then you should check out the vital grade information, because it is something you agreed to at the beginning of the semester.
Absolutely. All right, good. Well, this has been fun, and we've enjoyed doing these. So I should turn off my screen share so you can see my friendly face smiling out at you. Whoops.
Oh.
Ah, there I am. And yeah, and it's been a fun semester, and we hope that you will all go on and top the charts with your hit songs and um, and so on.
Oh, now you're making me sad. We're like, oh, we're gonna miss you guys. Oh.
Well, maybe we are a little bit.
Yeah, this has been fun,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I get to hang out with Professor McQuillan, and all of these go on our YouTube link. So if you really just can't get enough of listening to us jabber back and forth at each other, you're welcome to continue to watch and see if we continue to make as much cogent sense as we're making now.
When archaeologists come back in the future, they'll find these YouTube videos and they'll.
Well, I'm watching the viewers steadily leave the room, so I think we're at this point we're just amusing ourselves, and we should call it quits.
Yeah, it's bedtime on the East Coast.
Yes. All right, guys, it's been real fun, and we've enjoyed it. So
Absolutely.
on behalf of myself and
me,
yeah, usually when I say on behalf of myself, I'd expect to say on behalf of myself and Professor McQuillan, but that was a weird prompt there. We wish you well. We wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you want to call it, so you feel good about yourself. Whatever you want to
celebrate.
Whatever you celebrate it with your friends, family. Or celebrate it away from those people, depending on whatever makes you happy. But we wish you all the best in this semester and future semesters, or in your life if you're moving on from Rutgers.
Absolutely. All right. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.